got anything?
Nope, I think we'll just dive on into her. Number 30, Drake May. Your thoughts on him?
See, so I had him at 31. You had him at 30. Uh, so Drake May is to me is an interesting QB this year. Um, I know that New England's got Brisket as well, um, and I know Wiggs has got a little different opinion on how that might shake out. Yeah, I think he's going to definitely be starting this year. There's no question in my mind that he's going to be starting, especially where they picked him. And so, but you know, um, I don't have a high level of confidence that he's going to have a huge fantasy year. I think that New England is really just going to be they're going to struggle this year. I think that they'll have a decent running game, but I don't know that they're going to have a lot of production, from their receivers. I'd be really surprised if they even have a 1,000 yard receiver this year, just based on how they're probably going to run their offense or probably going to rely on their defense. Um, so so from my aspect, I think he falls in the number 30 just given who's left out there, you know, after them. But I do think he's going to have a decent career if they use him right, and they get him some decent weapons. I just think he's going to struggle this year, given where he fell in regards to the draft, to which team and the players around him.
Yeah, I ranked him here at 30 because I also think he'll have a bit of a tough year. I could potentially see him being like around the 25 or 24, 25 area as well, but I think it's just going to be hard for him to get into the flow of things right away. I could also see Brissett starting a few games here at the start of the year, possibly as well. Um, but I like you said, it's gonna be tough for him with like the receiving core he's got, and I don't think there'll be a 1,000 yard receiver either. But I think we'll see a few guys in KJ Osborne and Demario Douglas who could have like a good 700 or 800 yards, and I could see Drake May throwing for maybe like 3,250 to 350 yards or 3,500 yards, but I don't know. It's a tough spot because you don't really have like a solid wide receiver one, and you have like 4 or 5 different guys that you don't know how they're gonna like produce throughout the year and what connections he'll grow with those receivers, and it's kind of hard to judge without like seeing him play yet too.
Yeah, I think out of the rookie quarterbacks, you've got you got Caleb Williams, who fell into a pretty good situation with Chicago. You got Jaden Daniels. Again, I think he fell into not a bad situation in Washington in regards to what they have there. And then obviously, I think May's gonna definitely do better than Penix, because I don't think Penix is really even gonna see the light of day in the regular season unless Kirk Cousins gets hurt. And McCarthy, he's going to be battling with Darnold for the starting position, and with us both, coming from Minnesota and kind of a little bit engaged with the Vikings. Everything you hear there is, it's still not, a lot of people seem to think that Darnold is going to be starting, which could very well happen, but I think it's still up in the air in Minnesota. I definitely think May has a higher chance, or definitely is going to be starting for sure, whereas there's a little question in regards to McCarthy. Then you have Bo Nix, with Denver. I know a lot of people seem to think that Peyton might not go with Nix right away. I disagree with that. So I think I think Nix has got a shot to start as well. But out of the rookie quarterbacks, outside of maybe well, even Nix I think fell in a better situation a little bit, just from a wide receiver perspective. I just think May got the short. He drew the short straw.
Moving on to 29. Danny Dimes. We're pretty close on both of these so far.
Yeah,
28, 29, 31, 30.
yeah. I'm not a huge Danny Dimes fan. I did put him at 28. I think there's a lot of question marks around him. Um, I don't remember what he threw for last year, but I think it was. Do you remember? Was it?
He was hurt last year.
Oh, that's right. He was hurt last year. He started the beginning of the year though.
Yeah,
I
I
think
can look it up here.
so. But anyways, I know he was hurt and stuff, but I'm just not. Um, I'm not a huge Danny Dimes fan. I think he's got a lot to prove. Yeah, it looks like
5 weeks.
looks like he played 5 weeks, so he really didn't have a lot of you know stat value last year. I think the fact that they brought in and drafted Neighbors is is definitely a good start to help build their offense. But I don't, I think they brought in what Singletary as their running back.
And they drafted one too.
And they drafted one, but I don't think their running back crew is. They definitely took a hit with losing Barkley, and I know that they got Wendell Robinson, I believe it is, as their other receiver. Um, I just don't see Danny Dimes um, progressing the way other people might think. And it looks like he's got Robinson, and then there's Darius Slayton, uh, and then the tight end. I think who's their tight end there? Oh yeah, so they
Yeah,
got
because they lost their tight end to retirement.
yeah, they lost Waller to retirement. So I think their offense is going to be kind of in shambles, and I think Dimes has got a lot to prove, but I'm just not seeing it in him this year, and I think it's going to be a struggle.
Yeah, I think it'll be a struggle for him as well. He's really done nothing since joining the league that's impressed me at least. The fact that he got paid a ton of money and then got hurt, and then there's even talks about them trying to draft a quarterback at one point this year. Like it just, I don't know, it doesn't look good. And like you said, they doesn't really have like a ton of great weapons outside of Malik Neighbors. Like Wandale Robinson definitely could have a good year, but it's going to take more than just those two guys to have a good year. Devin Singletary would have to have a pretty solid year as well. And then they drafted Tracy, I believe. I think they actually may have drafted two guys here. But you look at the rest of the receivers, you got Isaiah Hodgins, Allen Robinson, Isaiah McKenzie, like Jalen Hyatt. Like you just never know what you're gonna get there from their wide receiver three or even their top two guys. So it's kind of hard to put him higher. He definitely could have a better year than what we have him ranked. Like I could easily see him being around like the 20 spot. But that would take 1,000 yard year from his rookie and like almost 1,000 yard year from Wandale and a decent run game. Which the run game I just don't see happening. You take a major hit from losing your best player on your offense the last few years to now you got Devin Singletary who had a mediocre year at best in Houston last year.
Yeah, and I given that he's in the NFC East,
That's a tough division.
I mean, they Washington, the Eagles, and the Cowboys probably have three of the top tier defenses in the league, and he's gonna have to play those guys 6 times. I just man, I think he's going to struggle, especially within those division games, because I think those defenses are going to pound away at him. I think it's going to be just a really hard year for Danny Dimes. So I'm not I'm not expecting him to light the fire this year for fantasy for sure.
Yeah, and like you said, looking at it from a fantasy perspective, like you're talking 6 weeks there where it's going to be a question mark on how many points you're going to get from him. So yeah, that's super tough. And overall, it's I don't know. He hasn't done anything to really impress me at least. 28. Got JJ McCarthy.
Yeah, so the only reason why this guy snuck up in our top 30 is because this guy right over here. So yeah, I had him at 32. I know Wiggs had him at 21. I don't know what Wiggs was smoking the day that he ranked him at 21, but it must have been some really good stuff. Uh, Here's my thought. And I Well, first of all, I'm not convinced that he's going to be starting at the beginning of the year. Uh, Personally, I think if he goes in and he has a training camp and he shows the coaches the same stuff that Darnold does, and they're both right there with each other, equal in training camp in regards to what they do with all their stuff. I think they got to start him. That's my opinion. You traded up one pick to get number 10, so you gave up some value there.
Give up a lot of value
in the draft for that. And you brought in Sam Darnold, which I've had this discussion with Wiggs before. Darnold's had his shot. I know he hasn't been on great teams. I know that I'll give him a pass when it comes to the Jets. But when he went to Carolina, he did have the best running back in the league. He did have DJ Moore. He did he had stuff there. He still didn't improve it. Darnold's past history has always been he's always had a great camp, but then when it's come to the regular season, he just makes mistakes. That's what he does. He throws interceptions. He doesn't see the field well. I know everybody thinks that he's gonna, it's gonna be different because he's with KOC at Minnesota. I'm sorry, I don't see it that way. I know some people have talked that the Vikings are going to take it slow with McCarthy. Listen, you don't trade up one pick and give up the value that the Vikings did to get this guy at the number 10 pick to have him sit for a whole entire year. That's not how it works in the NFL, especially if you're a coach or a general manager who's on the hot seat, which, let's be honest, KOC and Kwesi for the Vikings right now, they were, from everything I've read and I've seen, they were told they need to find their guy in the draft, and they did, and they're telling everybody that they did. So are they really going to sit by and watch Sam Darnold start all year and put their jobs on the line for Sam Darnold? I don't think so. I think that McCarthy is definitely going to be starting at some point. Me personally, I think unless he really blows training camp, you just got to throw him in there and start him at the right away at the start of the season, especially when you're playing the Giants your first game. That I'm not saying the Giants are a bad team, but that would be a good team for him to get his feet wet against, build up some confidence and stuff. So I think 28's might be a little bit high for him on here, because obviously we don't know for sure if he's going to start yet. If he does start, I can definitely see him, potentially being in the top 30. So I'll give Wiggs credit on that. I don't think he's going to make it all the way up to 21, but I do see that he would definitely be, in the top 30 for sure. So it'll be interesting to see how the Vikings decide to use him this year. You just signed JJ, you got Addison. Obviously, Addison may or may not be starting right away in the season because of some of the off-field issues that he's had. But you still have the weapons in the backfield that you have with Aaron Jones and Ty Chandler. You've got a decent replacement for Hawkinson right now, and Tanyan, and other some other options at tight end. Yeah, you have some question about some of the depth on their wide receiver. I still think that they may either trade or bring in a free agent wide receiver, especially now what's happened with Addison. We'll have to wait and see on that. So um, there's a lot of questions up in the air about this guy. Um, I wasn't a huge fan of the pick. Yeah, he's a winner. Yeah, he came from Michigan. Yeah, he played for Jim Harbaugh, but I don't think he proved anything from the aspect of being able to go into the NFL and pass coming out of a run heavy offense in college with Jim Harbaugh. But maybe he'll prove me wrong, and I hope he does. So, what do you think, Wiggs?
Yeah, I put him at 21 under the assumption that he's gonna end up starting every single game, and if I am in the Vikings spot, like I got to be realistic here. You're looking at a 1-4 start at best. You have a really tough schedule to start the year on off. Like, yes, your easiest game is the Giants, which is week 1, but then after that you have like the Jets, the Texans, the Packers, and a few other teams. I think even coming out of the bye week at 1-4, we're gonna end up being 1-5 because we play the Lions coming right out of the bye. So realistically, what's the point in starting Darnold? It doesn't matter if he's starting or McCarthy starting. You're gonna be 1-4 realistically. You'll be lucky to steal a game or two even out of that, and even then you're looking at a 2-3 or 3-2 or 3-3 start. Like it's nothing like too crazy, so why not just throw him into the mix right away, see if he can keep games close against the 49ers or the Jets or the Texans at that, and see if he can get like a solid footing. There's no point in not doing that if you draft him as early as you did, and you gave up a ton of value to move up one spot to pick him when you probably could have got him at the next spot or at least gotten Knicks and then could have worked around Darnold that way. I find it hard to believe that you wouldn't start a player you drafted that early. And like, if you listen to people talk about the situation, like Randy Moss, for example, was in a video recently I saw on X where he was talking about if you got drafted in the first round, you're a starter on the team. And it makes no sense nowadays that if you get drafted in the first round, that you're going to be a bench player. And someone like Michael Penix, I think, got the short end of the stick on that end, getting picked there before JJ and then being stuck behind Cousins for at least 2 years. So I don't know. I find it hard to believe you don't start him. And like you said, Darnold's had a chance to prove himself. Like, yes, he hasn't been on an offense that has, Jay Jettas on it, but still, like, give the man a shot. He's got the weapons. You'll have Jefferson right away. You'll have Addison after whatever suspension or if he gets suspended comes in. Hawkinson when he comes back from injury. Even without Hawkinson, you still got Tunyon. You got a few other guys as well there at tight end. Like you never know what the tight end two will be with Hawkinson hurt. And then you have Aaron Jones, Ty Chandler. Like you got a ton of weapons. Just let the man play and figure it out.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. And everybody knows as soon as Darnold stumbles, uh, not only are the fans going to be screaming for McCarthy, but ownership is going to be all over not only Quasey but KOC to make the switch. So to me, don't even why
Don't even
even do
hesitate.
that?
Yeah.
Why even do that? Why even play around with it like that? Just go in, and like I said, unless he has a major setback during training camp in regards to where he's not picking up something or looking really mediocre, and Darnold's lighting up the fire and looking way better than him. Okay, maybe that's why you start Darnold, but if he's right up there and he's looking as good, if not better than Darnold, to me, you got to put him in as your starting quarterback right away. It just doesn't make sense to wait.
Moving on to 27. Justin Herbert. Now this one will probably make quite a few people upset with how low he is, but I think it's reasonable considering the fact that they brought in a run heavy coach, and honestly, their wide receiving core, in my opinion, is quite lackluster. So I just don't see him having like a crazy year.
No, and I think last year he threw for what? Um, uh, uh, was it around 4,000 yards? Um,
3,130.
yeah. So last year, yeah. So last year was around 3,100 yards. That was with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams there, with Eckler there, with you know, all the I think Everett was there last year. This year they brought in a brand new coach in Jim Harbaugh. Uh, I think that Herbert is a. I'm a huge Herbert fan. I really am. I think that this guy has a lot of talent. I think that they really missed the boat, um, with the weapons that they had. But I think bringing in Jim Harbaugh is really going to hurt his production from a fantasy football perspective. Yeah, they went out and they drafted um, a few receivers. I think what McConkey was one of them,
Yep.
and
Brendan Rice.
they got Brandon Rice, and then they got what Palmer's in there still, I
Yep.
believe. So
Johnston.
they have it's not like they have a terrible receiving core, but they're really young and they gave up all their weapons. And the one thing that Jim Harbaugh has always been shown to do is run the ball. I think he's gonna pound the rock, and he's gonna rely on the defense to hold the score down. I think they're gonna have low scoring games. You know, with the Chargers. I just don't see Herbert lighting it up this year. Um, I had him ranked at 24, and that was just being generous because of who he is, because I'm a big fan. But it wouldn't surprise me if some of these other guys, hop over him that are below him, just given the fact that uh, uh, um, the options that they have, for targets at receivers and stuff. So I think he's going to have a challenging year. I think it's unfortunate for him too because he just signed a big contract with them. So again, maybe he'll surprise me. I just don't see it in a Jim Harbaugh run offense. That's just me.
Yeah, I think he'll have a tough year because like you don't have Mike Williams and Keenan Allen like you have had since you've joined the league. I think you took a major downgrade by not having either. Like, don't get me wrong, Williams was consistently hurt, but Keenan Allen was like his guy. And like looking back at his prior years, like last year he was hurt throughout the bulk of the year. He didn't have Williams. He lost Allen for a little bit as well to injury, but the year prior, 4,700 yards. The year before that, 5,000 yards in the second year with almost 40 touchdowns. Like he knows how to get the ball to his receivers. He knows how to get it to his running backs. Um, he's just in a tough spot. Now, it wouldn't surprise me if somehow he came out on fire this year and got some good connections with his receivers. I could totally see him being like a top like 12 quarterback this year. It's just hard to judge right now with how little we've seen of his other receivers. Like you have a few rookies. Joshua Palmer was all right when Keenan Allen and Mike Evans were hurt last year. He was the wide receiver one there for I think 2 weeks, 3 weeks maybe, but he didn't like have any outstanding games. I don't necessarily blame that on him. Herbert was hurt in and out of last year with his thumb and a few other things, but
Yeah, he only played 13 games last year, so that's probably why his production. If you had those 4 games, there's a chance that he could have been around
like
maybe
36, 37.
yeah, maybe that, maybe close to 4,000.
Yeah.
So the other thing that makes me believe that they're not going to be passing the ball as much as they used to is that they were really active going after running backs in the offseason. And they really, yeah, they drafted some guys at receiver, but they really were not active in the receiver
No.
market at all. So that just tells me that Harbaugh's plan is to run the rock.
Yeah.
So
And like you said, they signed Edwards and J.K. Dobbins. They didn't sign any receivers or anything, so
yeah,
it's hard to judge. Now, coming from a draft perspective, I wouldn't sway away from Herbert. He still could have a pretty solid year, but he's gonna be a backup at best on most rosters. So
yeah, I don't view him in a 12-man PPR. There is definitely a lot better options
yeah,
at QB based on your scoring structure than Herbert. He's to me, and until we see something different, he's a backup at best in
yeah.
fantasy. Bye week replacement.
Russell Wilson.
Yeah, so Russell here. Listen, I'm not a huge Russell Wilson guy. I think Russell is at this point of his career where he's looking at the business aspect rather than the football aspect. I just don't think I'm just not a huge Russell Wilson fan. I thought he was great in Seattle. Is there a chance that he could come back and be the Russell Wilson of old? Sure, there's a chance of it. Do I see that happening? No, I don't. I think, yeah, he went to Pittsburgh. Yes, he's got George Pickens. Yes, he's got Fryermuth. Yes, he's got two really good running backs there. Uh, but, and I know Wiggs probably will disagree with me on this, but listen, uh, yeah, he was in Denver last year, and Denver wasn't, you know, the greatest situation. The receivers were getting hurt and stuff like that, and I get that. But until Russell shows me that he's all in, you know, from the aspect of, what you know, I'm definitely all in. I'm going to be a great teammate, and I'm focused on winning, and I'm not focused on the business aspect. I just don't see him lightening up. And I'll be quite honest with them bringing in Justin Fields like they did. I definitely feel like Justin Fields is a real similar quarterback to Russell Wilson when he was in his prime, right? So I think they did that to push Russell Wilson, and I just feel like if Fields at any point shows them that he's the guy, um, you know, they're gonna they're gonna put him in there. Or if he does it during training camp, I think they could do it. But do I think it'll realistically will happen? No, I think Russell will be the starting quarterback. I think if they struggle though, at any point during the season, if they start off and they start losing games and they go 0-3, 0-4, people are going to start calling for Justin Fields, just like we talked earlier, with the McCarthy situation. I think it's the same kind of deal there in Pittsburgh. I know a lot of people seem to think that the Steelers brought Fields in because maybe they'd have an opportunity to trade him if somebody needed a quarterback, stuff like that. I don't. I think they brought Fields in for an insurance policy in case Russell Wilson doesn't um, produce like the Russell Wilson of old. And I'm not convinced that he's all in. So for that, that's why I had him ranked at 27. So you know, again, from a fantasy football perspective, I don't view Russell Wilson as anything more than a bye week replacement. I think there's better options, even if a quarterback gets hurt, than him, until he proves me wrong in the regular season and we see him doing doing something positive. I That's just how I feel about him. Wiggs, I know you're probably a little bit different.
Yeah, I disagree on a few things there, but I think Russell Wilson's going to have a bounce back year here in Pittsburgh. He's got better weapons around him. You look at the Broncos offense, like your number one receiver in Cortland Sutton hurt throughout the majority of his time there. And then his other receivers, I think Tim Patrick, hurt, who was supposed to be like their wide receiver too. Jerry Jeudy didn't have any outstanding years there, and he was so hyped up when drafted. Um, you have a few others in Roman Wilson and people that are on this Pittsburgh offense where he could have a good impact with moving into this offense. Like I think George Pickens is going to have over 1,400 yards this year and have quite a few touchdowns. I think Wilson's going to have a connection with Pickens kind of like he had with Metcalf, and I know that might be a little bit of a hot take, but it's going to happen. That's just my take. That's what's going to happen this year, and he's going to throw for over 4,000 yards and get back to what he was doing in Seattle. He had a very mediocre receiving core, and his running back core there in Denver was just not good, and he still threw for an average of 3,250 yards even with that. So I think moving into a system where you have a set wide receiver one who's proven himself, you have